February 2025. NBC executives are sitting in a Manhattan boardroom staring at two columns of numbers. On the left, veteran WNBA players who built the league for 20 years. Champions, Olympic gold medalists, legends. On the right, one 23-year-old rookie who played exactly one season. The executives don't need to debate. The numbers make the decision for them. The veterans brought legacy. Caitlin Clark brought millions. And just like that, careers that survived decades of struggle ended with a spreadsheet. But here's the part that makes this story unforgettable. The veterans did this to themselves. They spent 2 years trying to destroy Caitlin Clark. They threw elbows. They celebrated when she got hurt. They went on podcasts and told her to know her place. They turned her rookie season into a masterclass in how not to welcome talent. And now those same players are watching Caitlin sit courtside at NBA games, analyzing LeBron James and Steph Curry on NBC broadcasts, while they're nowhere to be found. The revenge didn't come from Caitlin. It came from the people who write the checks. And those people just figured out that the old guard became dead weight the moment they declared war on their own golden goose. This isn't about basketball anymore. This is about the most brutal karma arc in professional sports history. Stick around, because we're connecting dots that the mainstream media won't touch. NBC didn't abandon these veterans out of cruelty. They abandoned them because the business case became impossible to ignore. And that business case was built brick by brick every single time a veteran tried to hurt the one player keeping their league alive. If you believe the story behind the story matters, hit that like button right now. It tells us you're ready to filter out the noise and see what's really happening. Because what you're about to hear isn't speculation, it's math. And math doesn't care about feelings. Let's rewind to April 2024. Caitlin Clark gets drafted by the Indiana Fever. The Fever had been one of the worst franchises in the league for years. Their average home attendance was hovering around 4,000 fans in a 17,000-seat arena. Tickets were dirt cheap because nobody wanted to go. The product was bad. The energy was dead. The Fever were a punchline. Then Caitlin arrived and everything flipped overnight. Season ticket sales jumped 300% in 1 week. Road teams started moving Fever games to bigger venues because their normal arenas couldn't handle the demand. Her first game pulled 2.4 million viewers. Let me put that in perspective. Before Caitlin, WNBA games averaged around 400,000 viewers on a good night. Some weekday afternoon games barely cracked 100,000. The league was playing in half-empty arenas. Players were flying commercial because the league couldn't afford charter flights. Now those same arenas were packed. Games were selling out weeks in advance. Ticket prices tripled. Merchandise sales broke every record the league had. TV networks were actually fighting over broadcast rights instead of treating WNBA games like filler content. The league got exactly what it needed. A superstar who brought casual fans, corporate sponsors, and real money. You'd think the veterans would have said thank you. You'd be wrong. Diana Taurasi went on a podcast before the season even started. She talked about how Caitlin would struggle against professional defenders, how the college game is different, how fame doesn't mean success. It sounded like advice. It felt like a threat. Other veterans jumped in. They started doing interviews where they barely mentioned Caitlin's name, like saying it out loud would give her more power. Then the game started, and the hostility went from verbal to physical. Kennedy Carter's shoulder check became a national news story. The hit was so obvious, so intentional, that even casual fans who don't watch basketball saw the clip. Angel Reese celebrated it. She clapped on the sideline like Carter had just won a championship. The message was clear. This rookie doesn't belong here. The cheap shots kept coming, flagrant fouls that referees barely called, hard screens that happened away from the ball, players talking trash in ways that crossed the line from competition to personal, social media posts throwing shade, podcast interviews where veterans complained about all the attention Caitlin was getting. Some players even suggested the media coverage was biased, that Caitlin was getting promoted over more deserving players who had been in the league for years. The fans noticed. They started asking a simple question. Why are these players mad that someone brought them attention? Because here's what many of you spotted weeks before the media caught on. The veterans weren't upset about the attention itself. They were upset that they couldn't control it. They had spent years building the WNBA into something respectable. They flew commercial. They played through seasons when arenas were empty. They promoted the league when nobody cared. And now this rookie was getting credit for growth they believed they had earned. But the math told a different story, a brutal story. Let's look at the actual numbers. Before Caitlin, the Indiana Fever were pulling maybe $50,000 in ticket revenue for a home game. After Caitlin, they were pulling over $300,000. Before Caitlin, WNBA merchandise sales were stagnant. After Caitlin, sales increased by double digits across the entire league. Before Caitlin, networks treated WNBA broadcast rights like a charity case. After Caitlin, they were bidding against each other. Every single metric pointed to the same conclusion. Caitlin Clark was bringing value that the WNBA had never seen before, and the veterans were trying to hurt her. NBC was watching all of this happen. Peacock was watching. Team owners were definitely watching, and they were taking notes. They saw which players were embracing the new attention and which ones were fighting it. They saw who was good for business and who was becoming toxic. Those notes would matter very soon. Because in February 2025, NBC announced a massive media rights deal with both the NBA and WNBA. This deal was worth billions. The WNBA portion alone was the biggest contract in league history. Everyone expected NBC to start promoting the league's veterans, the champions, the legends who built the foundation. Instead, NBC made a decision that stunned the basketball world. They put Caitlin Clark on NBA broadcasts. Not WNBA coverage, NBA coverage. She's on screen with Vince Carter and Carmelo Anthony during pregame shows. She's analyzing LeBron James and Steph Curry. Meanwhile, Diana Taurasi and Breanna Stewart are nowhere to be seen on NBC's promotional material. Think about how insane that decision really was. NBC just spent billions on WNBA rights. They could have promoted any player they wanted. They could have built a whole show around the league's history. They could have featured the four-time champions, the Olympic gold medalists, the players who stuck with the league when it was losing money every year. Instead, they gave the biggest platform to a rookie who had played exactly one season. The veterans were furious. Sources close to the Players Association said some players felt betrayed. They had been loyal to the WNBA for decades. They played through seasons when arenas were empty. They promoted the league when nobody cared. And now NBC was acting like none of that history mattered. But NBC executives weren't thinking about loyalty. They were thinking about money. And the numbers told a story that was impossible to ignore. Here's where we need to pause and talk about what's really happening, because this is the moment where business strategy became indistinguishable from revenge. Drop a comment right now telling us which veteran player you think regrets their treatment of Caitlin the most. Because what's about to unfold is a masterclass in consequences. Peacock started rolling out their WNBA marketing campaigns. Every poster featured Caitlin, every commercial highlighted Caitlin. The other players became background noise in their own league's promotional content. This wasn't an accident. NBC tested different promotional materials with casual sports fans. The results were brutal for the veterans. When they showed posters featuring Diana Taurasi or Breanna Stewart, people barely reacted. When they showed Caitlin Clark, engagement went through the roof. The casual fans knew who she was. They remembered her college games. They wanted to see what she would do next. NBC made a calculation that sports networks make all the time. Who brings viewers? The answer wasn't even close. A Caitlin Clark game on Peacock would pull over 1 million viewers. A game without her would pull maybe 300,000. That's a 70% drop. For a streaming platform trying to justify subscription costs, that difference is everything. So NBC built their entire WNBA strategy around one player. And the veterans who tried to run her out of the league were left watching from the sidelines. But it gets worse for them. The WNBA Players Union started making noise about a potential strike. They wanted better pay, better working conditions, charter flights for every team, all reasonable demands. Except they made those demands at the worst possible time. Because now, the owners had leverage they'd never had before. In most labor disputes, players have power because without them, there's no product to sell. But the WNBA product isn't the collective league anymore. It's one person, and that one person isn't part of the union fight. Caitlin Clark is sitting courtside at Lakers games. She's getting paid by NBC whether the WNBA season happens or not. She's building her brand outside the league. She doesn't need the WNBA the way the veterans do. The veterans are starting to understand this reality. Some players have reportedly told union leaders to back off the strike threat. They're realizing they're negotiating from a position of weakness, not strength. They're seeing that if they force the owners to choose between paying them more money or building a league around young talent, the owners will choose the young talent every single time. This is the part where the veterans started to realize what they had done. They built a wall to keep Caitlin out. Instead, they built a prison for themselves. They handed the owners the perfect excuse to rebuild without them, and now they're trapped in a negotiation they can't win. Let's talk about the corporate sponsorship angle, because this is where the story gets even more ruthless. Nike had a decision to make. They sponsor several WNBA veterans. They also have Caitlin Clark under a massive endorsement deal. Super Bowl 60 was coming up. Nike had the budget to run a commercial during the game. The question was, who do they feature? They chose nobody. Nike confirmed they wouldn't run a Super Bowl commercial this year. No Caitlin Clark ad, no veteran player features, nothing. This seemed strange until you understood what was happening behind the scenes. Nike didn't want to be in the middle of a war. If they featured Caitlin, the veterans and their supporters would attack them on social media. If they featured the veterans, they'd be promoting players with lower marketability and worse public perception, so they pulled out completely. Other brands didn't have the same problem. State Farm, Gatorade, and Wilson all doubled down on Caitlin. Her signature shoe line with Nike is set to drop soon, and pre-orders are already breaking records. Meanwhile, veteran players are seeing their endorsement deals dry up. The corporate world is ruthless. They don't care about legacy or feelings. They care about return on investment. When Caitlin posts on Instagram, she gets millions of interactions. When veterans post, they get thousands. That difference matters to brands. Peacock subscriptions went up 35% during the WNBA season. NBC executives traced the bump directly to Caitlin Clark's games being available on the platform. That's real money. That's data you can't argue with. The veterans wanted respect. Corporate America gave them a pink slip instead. And here's what nobody's talking about publicly, but everyone's whispering about privately. Team owners are having conversations about a nuclear option. What if they just started over? What if they kept Caitlin, brought in young talent, and let the veterans walk away? It sounds extreme until you look at the economics. A 10-year veteran making $200,000 a season brings in maybe $50,000 worth of ticket sales and merchandise. Caitlin Clark brings in millions? The math isn't even close. NBC already made its choice clear. They gave Caitlin a platform completely separate from the WNBA. She's on NBA broadcasts now. She's building her brand outside the league that tried to tear her down. If the WNBA season gets canceled, Caitlin still wins. She's still on TV. She's still getting paid. She's still relevant. The veterans don't have that safety net. If the season gets canceled, they disappear. No games means no exposure. No exposure means no endorsements. No endorsements means no income outside their player salary. Some veterans are starting to break ranks. Quiet conversations are happening. Some players are looking at what happened and thinking maybe they made a mistake. Maybe they should have welcomed Caitlin instead of fighting her. But it might be too late for regrets. What's happening in the WNBA right now is going to change how professional sports work. For the first time, we're seeing a league completely rebuild its identity around a single athlete. The NBA has superstars, but it doesn't depend on just one person. The WNBA does now. Everything revolves around Caitlin Clark. The schedule gets built around her games. The marketing focuses on her. The television contracts prioritize her. The veterans are learning a hard lesson. It doesn't matter how many championships you won. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the league. The only thing that matters is what you bring to the table right now. And right now, they're not bringing what Caitlin brings. This is going to change how future WNBA players act. Young players coming into the league are watching what happened. They're seeing that talent matters, but marketability matters more. They're seeing that you can't just be good at basketball anymore. You have to be good at basketball, and good for business. 1 or 2 years ago, Caitlin Clark was just a college player with a deadly three-point shot. Today, she's the reason veterans are losing their jobs. NBC didn't make this decision because they're cruel. They made it because the numbers force their hand. When one player brings more value than an entire generation of veterans combined, the choice becomes obvious. The veterans had their chance. They could have lifted Caitlin up and risen with her. Instead, they tried to tear her down and buried themselves. Now they're sitting at home while she sits courtside at NBA games. The owners aren't coming back to save them. The networks aren't changing their minds. The business has moved on. Before you go, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because next time we're breaking down the internal WNBA meetings where commissioners are reportedly panicking about what happens if Caitlin decides to leave the league entirely. The dependency they've created might be the thing that destroys them. This is what happens when you fight against your own success. The league doesn't belong to the veterans anymore. It belongs to the girl from Iowa they couldn't break. And she's just getting started.